registered a new vehicle because I start getting mail from insurance companies wanting to sell me insurance or sell me warranty on a vehicle I've just purchased. And that's happened to several members of my family. So I would suggest that maybe the way that those companies use that information should be reviewed and be tightened up.
Well, I can tell you it's not the BMV, and I know who it is though, because I work on roads and transportation specifically. That we worked on some bills last year between manufacturers and dealers, and the big argument with some of those folks were, let that go by. The big argument with some of those folks were ownership of the customer's information from the manufacturers to the dealers. And they actually had an agreement where the dealers said it was theirs for a while, and the manufacturers, they actually wanted it because consumer information is big business, to your point. People want it, and I know for a fact that when you buy cars, that the manufacturers, whether it's a Chevy or Honda or whoever, are selling your information.
Right, but these were used vehicles.
They sell that too. They really do. I'm just saying, it's a big business. We don't have any legislation to stop that. Angie got something to add to that.
The website, optoutprescreen.com, will actually eliminate all the phone calls in and selling your information to the mail.
Yeah, and I agree with you, sir.
Then do not call us.
I don't agree with people selling information. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for the BMV. I just think there's some misinformation out there. And I know that we looked at it heavily, being on, once again, roads and talking to the BMV guys. And it does pop up every once in a while, but now is there an individual that is out there that has access to this that may do something wrong? I'm sure it happens. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say it doesn't, because that's probably not true. But I know as a system, they don't. I mean, I'll definitely look into it, but we have looked into it. But I think it's an issue that the manufacturers are grabbing this information and using our information for monetary gain, so.
Would you have Angie repeat that?
Yeah, here, let me give her the mic here. Let me get back and forth.
So it's called optoutprescreen.com, and you actually have to opt out of mail and of phone calls. Because we deal with this a lot with mortgage trigger leads. We actually have our Mortgage Bankers Alliance out in DC right now trying to fight mortgage trigger leads, but it is for insurance companies as well. But you have to opt out of mail and phone calls. So you have to do both. But it's very helpful.
Thanks, Andy. Does anybody else have a question? Do any of the three of you have any ending comments?
Well, I think in closing this, so Tuesday is the House deadline for having any bill heard and a committee report adopted at a committee. So we're literally at the end. We're tying up loose ends Monday and Tuesday. I think the Senate's a couple days after. So essentially we have roughly 3 weeks left to hash out the details in the changes in the bills. But one of the looming problems facing us right now is FSSA. And if you've heard on the radio or any of the media reports, for these medically complex children who require, attendant care 24/7 or several hours a day, and how they have proposed to change that, I anticipate it being problematic if we don't come up with some sort of solution between now and when we adjourn. Because once we adjourn, we don't come back till January. So all these families will be affected by whatever decision's made. If we don't make the decision, then FSSA gets to make the decision and implement it for the next 8 months. So that could present a challenge on how we're going to handle that, or if there are solutions in the works. And for those who are not aware, medically complex children are basically nonverbal, wheelchair bound. You have a feeding tube, you have a tray, you have you're in diapers all the time, and you need constant attendant care. And they're wanting to restructure how that is delivered. And it is not looking good for a lot of the families. They've given up their jobs to be their child's caregiver, And there are all kinds of regulations that go along with that. So I think we're hoping to find a solution that will at least carry us through until we can address it in a budget session in 2025, because much of this came about as a result of our Medicaid shortfall from the forecast. And we ran about $1 billion, just a little bit less than $1 billion short. And there's a lot of ways we can address it. I have a real hard time placing that burden on the backs of our most vulnerable.
To Peggy's point on that, it's probably one of the biggest issues I've received, and it's not even legislation. So, and we get that from you all. And so, I think that's the biggest thing, is that when we hear things about, well, I started hearing about the B&B stuff from constituents. I started hearing about FSA stuff from families, from a lot of families. If you've heard about the Jackson Center in Mooresville, a lot of those families are affected by that. And you'll hear a lot of these bad rumors, well, these parents they're fleecing the government and they're getting all this money, and they look at that pay rate. Well, the reality with that pay rate, first of all, is that a provider that acts as an administrative kind of person flows through them, and they actually get the majority of that money. So the parent doesn't. So that's one false thing with that money. Number one. Number two, they say, well, we need to get rid of this and find somebody to watch their kid. The reality is we don't have the healthcare workers to do that for children out there. Am I gonna say, once again, I'll just put this disclaimer out there, that 100% of the parents are doing it right? Probably not. But I think the majority are. And the answer isn't, because if that goes away, we don't have somebody to fill in those spots, because we're hurting for healthcare workers everywhere. And also that, like Peggy said, these are not just kids, or they're not babysitting. They're feeding tubes and trachs and wheelchairs and diapers and that need that extreme care. So it is a big issue, but it's because folks like you bring it forward. And I appreciate that you all are here, because our biggest frustration, I'll say it over and over again, is bad information from the State House to here, because we're kind of in our bubble and we don't see what's going on. And the only way we do is if you all speak up. You give me grief, because I deserve it, I'm sure, a lot of the times. I'll give my phone number and card to anybody in the room, because I may not have the answer. I guarantee I probably won't, but I'll find those experts that do. So I think everybody up here feels that way.
All right, thank you. Before everybody leaves, if you get a chance, stop by and visit the League of Americans table over here. We have a couple minutes real quick. We need to do door prizes, but if anybody has some short announcements, we